Now we will study the scanned probe microscopy. We have already studied the simple microscope, we have studied the light microscope, we have studied the fluorescence microscope, we have studied the electron microscope. There are the different principles of every microscope we have studied, and electron microscope has two other microscopies, and that was really very interesting kind of microscope. Until now, all the microscopes we have already studied. The electron microscope was the best one, the microscope, and we will able to see the objects, or we will able to examine the objects which were really ultra thin objects, and we will able to see and examine them very nicely. Now the most important is the scanned probe microscopy, very complex kind of microscope. The scanned probe microscopy forms the images of surfaces using the physical probe that scans the specimen. It was really founded about in 1981 for the first time, and after that, the electron microscopy, which was founded in 1974, we were able to see the surfaces which are physical, which use the physical probe, and we will see the observe the objects. The basic principle lying behind the scanned probe microscopy is the interaction between the sharp probe and the surface, which is being provided by the 3D topographic image of the surface at the atomic scale. The two most popular modes of the scan probe microscopy are the scanning tunneling microscopy and the atomic force microscopy. So there is the interaction between the sharp probe and the surface, which provides and which give us the some better understanding of an object and of an image. As we have already studied that it is really very interesting to see something, or see the microbes, or see the viruses, bacteria and the parasites under the microscope, and their characteristics which are we unable to see with the naked eyes. So the basic principle lying behind the scanned probe microscopy is the interaction between the probe and the surface. The simple illustration of the SPM, we can see you can see from the slides the photo detector, which will be given on the from the above of the microscope, and then the laser from the right side, and the cantilever and the probe tip, which is from the right side, and the study surface. Now here the object will make it clear with the probe, which will be from the presented from the left side, and under the object we will able to see the image, and we will observe the image in the better way. The image formation, how the image is formed in the scan probe microscopy. We will be explain it in three steps. First of all, the scan the tip over the surface. So one of the pictures has been we have given in the slides, which is just in front of you. First of all, the probe, it will have interaction with the surface, as we have already studied. So it will be scan the tip over the surface. It will give us some special value, the value that will be recorded on your computer screen. Then on the base of that value, one of the heat map shape will be displayed on the computer. That will be the special scan probe microscopy, on the basis of which we can imagine, we can examine that special objects. So the image will be formed in the three ways. The first of all, it will be scan the tips of the surface, which will be on the basis of the probe. The probe will interaction with the surface, and surface will be come the scans it, and the value of that will be present on the front of your computer screen in the face of the heat map. The heat map, it's clear from the picture that it will just impress it in the objects, and you will be able to observe it in the better way. As far as we have already studied a number of the microscopic and microscopes, all of the microscopes are have their own advantages, and they have their own disadvantages. So all of them, until now we have studied the electron microscope, which were the best of the microscopes, but it will also contain with some of the limitations. The most of them that we have to use some kind of special materials, or we have to use the ultra thin objects, or the images, or the specimen, which may be able to, we have to dehydrate the images, which may be the we can kill the specimen. So we have to make it alive, the specimen, and we have to examine it under the electron microscope. Similarly, the SPM, the scan probe microscope, also has their advantages, and also they are contained with their disadvantages. Here we have given them some of their limitations. The tail shape of the probe is difficult to determine sometimes. Of course, we are using the special kind of the probes which will interact with the surface. So in this way, it will be very difficult to see the detailed shape of the probe. Slower in image acquiring. This is also one more limitations. we are using the probe to interact with the surface. So in this way, it will be very difficult to see the object or to see the image quickly, just like we were able to see in the electron microscopy. In this way, in this microscope, it will be a little bit slower as compared to the other microscope. Maximum image size is smaller. The maximum image size which we will be able to see, or which we will be able to observe at the end of the day, will be smaller as compared to the other microscopes. It cannot examine the buried solid or liquid interfaces, because the basic principle of this kind of the microscope is the interaction of the surface with the probe. So we will just able to see the surface, and we can be able to see it in details, but not the buried surfaces inside the solid or liquid intersurfaces will be difficult to examine under this kind of the microscope.